Hey everybody, Wim here at MMA Formula. Just wanted to do a quick little thing about UFC 215. I watched it this weekend and just sharing some thoughts overall. So the first fight on the main card was Jeremy Stephens against Gilbert Melendez. I actually quite kind of like that fight. Melendez is kind of a special fighter in the sense that he's not being terribly active the last few years. I think he is a talent, but he's had some, he's had some issues. He's had some downsides. So he hasn't been terribly active for the last couple of years, and also he's pretty much on a I think it's about four fight losing streak now. So not quite sure where he's going to be headed in the UFC from now on after this fight, but we'll see. Anyway, Jeremy Stephens, on the other hand, kind of not a perfect fighter, but he has some very interesting qualities. He's very strong. He's very aggressive, and he hits so terribly hard, punching, kicking, and everything. He does real well. So it was interesting to see the matchup. The main takeaway for me is that even in 2017, people still think they can get away with not defending against leg kicks, and it is beyond me. But it's a fact, as you saw, the first round. I think it took about 2 to 3 minutes for Gilbert Melendez to understand that this is a critical mistake. And Jeremy Stephens actually mentioned that in his victory speech after the announcement at the end of the fight. He basically said that Melendez has this old style fighting stance, and he hasn't really evolved much. Those were his words. But I tend to agree with him a little bit. Is that Melendez had this really really large stance here with his lead leg very much exposed to leg kicks. He was relatively heavy on his feet, which means that he was a prime candidate for getting chopped away at the legs. And Jeremy Stephens very early on threw a good leg kick, and interestingly, immediately underneath the knee, so hitting the side of the shin bone and the muscles there. So it was interesting to see how that was going to work. But he was smart about it. He fought a smart fight, and he didn't just go for the weakness right off the bat. As he saw what was going on, that Melendez was having trouble with that leg kick. It was after about 3 to 4 kicks that I noticed that you could see the swelling and on Melendez's leg. And after the 5th kick, then it was really clearly obvious that there was something going on there. It was very painful. My guess, maybe his fibula is broken. So that's the bone next to right next to the shin bone on the outside of your leg. Maybe not. Maybe that's it, or there was an issue there. But in any case, it was as you could clearly see afterwards, very painful for Melendez to continue. He dropped to the floor several times throughout the fight, and pretty much Jeremy Stephens had his way with him. He didn't put him away, so Melendez is a tough opponent. He takes a lot of punishment, clearly. I read some reports this morning that he apparently, when he was sitting in the corner in between rounds, said that he was ready to give up, but his coaches managed to convince him to keep on going, and he did so. So it takes a lot of courage to do that when you are basically half crippled, which is what happened early on for him in the fight. So you have to picture this, that you're 2 to 3 minutes into the first round of a big fight, and you really need to win, because again, look at his track record. He's not doing all that great for the last couple of fights, and then this guy just basically obliterates your leg by kicking it a handful of times. So it takes a lot of courage to keep on going anyway, and he did his best, Melendez, but obviously he was too much held back by that injury, which meant that Stephens could actually do pretty much whatever he wanted. I really liked how Stephens set it up afterwards, because as soon as he spotted the injury, he didn't just go for it, and that's a basic mistake that beginning fighters or inexperienced fighters make, is that they see the opening and they just go for it without really thinking about anything else about setting it up. They just flurry and then try to hit that weak spot over and over. It can sometimes work, but against a more seasoned fighter, which is the case here with Melendez, you don't really want to take that chance, because as soon as they can see it coming, that you're going for the target, they could actually counter you. And Stephens kept on doing the opposite. He kept on threatening with striking, going to the body, doing auto kicks and so on, attacking the other leg as soon as Melendez switched. So a very good fight on his end, and lots, again, lots a tip of the hat to Melendez, because he stuck to his guns and didn't quit when many people would have. So that was quite an interesting fight. It would be interesting to see where Steven goes now. Goes now, because the category is a little bit, it's a little bit interesting to see what's going on here at this weight. We'll see where he ends up next, but I think he made a fair case for himself to get a shot at some of the higher ranked fighters. So good fight for the first one. Then next up we have Latifi against Tyson Pedro. I'll be relatively brief about this. I wasn't really all that enthusiastic about this fight to begin with, and it kind of proved me right when I watched it. It wasn't a horrible fight. It wasn't awesome. It was interesting to see where both men are standing right now, and I think there's some room for improvement for both of them. Obviously, Latifi dominated a large portion of the fight, and with his takedown attempts, and especially when he was on top of the ground, he was doing quite well. On the other hand, Pedro had a couple of good interactions, good moments as well. I like the way he sets up his kicking techniques, has some sneaky setups and feints and so on, and misdirection. So it's not horrible to see somebody doing that, but you can see as well that he isn't really at the point where he can actually take on the big guys in his category, in his weight class. So I think he has some growing to do. Same with Latifi. He had some very nice moments in striking as well. I really liked how he would defend against some of the body kicks and then immediately counter with a straight right hand. That was blocked, unfortunately, but great reflexes, good reaction, and I like that as well. But overall, not the most, how should I put it, not the most exciting fight to watch. Just two guys who are making their way up through the ranks, and keep an eye out for them. With a little bit of luck, they'll keep on improving, and we can expect bigger and better things from them. And then we get to one of the fights. I was very much interested in seeing what was going to happen. Henry Cejudo against Wilson Hayes. Well, Henry's again, one of the guys I like a lot. He's an Olympic caliber wrestler. He did extremely well in that sport, and then he made a switch to MMA. He's still relatively young, so I was expecting him to keep on growing and getting better as a fighter. And then when he got a fight against Mighty Mouse, which he unfortunately lost in large part in the clinch, which was extremely surprising, and which goes to show just how good Mighty Mouse actually is. I was interested in seeing how Henry would evolve, and I can only say that given what he's been doing since his loss to DJ, he's actually grown quite a lot. In this fight here against Wilson, it was interesting to see how he did I wouldn't say complete different approach on the fight game, but it was just a basic stance. He took a little bit more of it looks like he took a little bit of an inspiration from Conor McGregor with this kind of funky karate type stance, the lead hand very much extended. So I was when I first saw him do that, I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. And second thought was that right hand's going to come shooting out straight down center line and nail Wilson. And that's actually what happened in the first round. You'd see that numerous times when he actually scored well. And when he landed a good shot, it was very often that right hand that was perfectly timed and just spot on, hitting the target cleanly. I liked his footwork. I liked the way that he changed things up. He just didn't go for, again, what many beginning fighters do, and obviously Henry's no beginner anymore, but it goes to show as a fighter matures and he gets better, he gets more experience, that he stays more and more on a path along development where he becomes a more complex fighter to analyze, meaning that obviously Henry's grappling and wrestling is something we really don't have to put into question, but his striking wasn't as clean as I would have liked it. in his previous fights, and now you see that he's actually evolving to become an extremely competent striker. So his stand-up's getting very well as well. And one of the ways in which you can see that is that he was clearly dominating Wilson in the first round. I think there's no argument about that. So when you saw the way that he was then mixing things up, instead of going for that right hand repeatedly, he would set up other techniques. He would use his legs and so on. So he's becoming again very well rounded and doing an excellent job at mixing not only target selection but also technique selection, meaning not just going for the same target over and over when you spot an opening, but also mixing targets. And at the same time, if you do go for the same target, don't always go about it the exact same way. If you see that you can land a guy, you can land a leg kick on a guy, for instance, like we saw in the previous fight with Stevens versus Melendez. Well, throw the leg kick, sure, but set it up in different ways. Throw a different variation on the leg kick. And small plug here, so anybody who wants to know more about the leg kick, get my book, The Leg Kick, Your Ultimate Guide to the Leg Kick for Mixed Martial Arts. I'll put a little link in the comments here. So the main thing is that learning as a more seasoned fighter, that you don't have to do the same thing over and over again. And this is typically one of the things that happens on a subconscious level, because the way your brain actually learns during the adrenal stress moments of a fight is that when something works, you want to do it again right away, because your brain says that part of your brain says, okay, this worked, do it again, so we can go home and we don't have to fight anymore. And it's very difficult to override that reaction with your conscious mind and actually planning strategically and tactically for your victory, even though the opening is right there. Because at this level, we're talking world-class level, this could be a trap. It could be a setup from the other guy pretending to feign weakness a little bit and then drawing you in to throw the same technique again. And he has a nice counter waiting for you. Or it could just be that the answer isn't there. And we saw this, for instance, in the first McGregor-Diaz fight, where Conor was just trying over and over to throw that left hand, that big left hand. And sure, he was making contact, but it was glancing blows, and Nate was just a little bit out of reach for the perfect target, to offer the perfect target to Conor. So the result is that Conor wasted a lot of energy in the first round and pretty much emptied his tank there in the first one, and then obviously we know what happened in the second. And this is what you see how Henry Cejudo is actually quite experienced now, and he's very smart in the way that he keeps on constructing his victory against Wilson, as opposed to just going for that opening as soon as he saw that the right straight punch was landing. So excellent, great fight. I enjoyed it a lot. I also enjoyed afterwards Henry pretty much walking to the water cage and just having this little moment with DJ. And as far as I can recognize from what was said afterwards, is that he basically said, I'm coming for you, and you saw the exchange, and you can actually see Mighty Mouse answer, I'll be waiting, or I'm waiting. So it's going to be interesting to see if Henry gets another shot at the title. I very much hope so. Obviously, DJ is probably going to fight Borg next anyway, because that fight got cancelled. But I wouldn't be surprised if Henry gets a second shot afterwards to try and get the title. So overall, a really good fight. Enjoyed it a lot. Wilson, unfortunately, got pretty much beat up there. Not quite sure where he's gonna keep on going. Again, he's not a bad fighter, but it looks like he might not have what it takes right now to get to the title. Then we have another fight I enjoyed tremendously, and that is Rafael dos Anjos against Neil Magny. Again, both good fighters. Neil's, I wouldn't say the best fighter in the world. Again, I'm being careful. Don't wanna make anybody upset. But he's a good fighter. But I wouldn't say he's the best one ever. But he's doing okay for himself. Dos Anjos, obviously former champion, had a little bit of a rough patch over the last few years when he lost his title. But from as far as I can tell, I think he's much happier now at 170, where he's a little bit heavier and he doesn't have to do that extreme weight cut. and he looks a lot stronger now. The previous fight against Tarek Saffiedine, as Tarek is Belgium, I'm supposed to be in his corner as he's a fellow Belgian. So, but I actually like Dos Anjos a little bit more, even though I have nothing against Tarek. But in that fight, apparently Dos Anjos was sick, so his output wasn't tremendous, but he still managed to win. And then I was quite interested in seeing how he would perform now that he was supposedly going to be 100%. Well, we saw he clearly dominated Neil Magny. It was just there was no hesitation from the judges, in my opinion. If you would have looked at the scorecard so far before he managed to get the choke in, it was clearly Rafael dominating. Now a little tidbit that I do want to touch upon again. Considering the leg kick that he used to get Neil on the floor. Try to take a look at the fight again and look from the first seconds in until he does the leg kick. Look only at Dos Anjos' footwork. You'll notice that he fights from a southpaw stance as he tends to do. But before he throws a leg kick, you'll see him switch and then switch again. And then right before he throws a leg kick, it looks like he's going to switch again, and he steps in with his left foot and then throws that leg kick. Now, the way he does that footwork, it's not really a switch step like you see when somebody throws a lead leg kicking technique, whether it's a low kick or a body kick or a high kick, where they do the typical switch step to accelerate on the spot the lead leg. That's not what he does. It's not a full step either, where he takes a big step forward going from a right stance to a left lead stance and then kicking. That's not either. It's a little bit in between. So the way he sets it up, the way he does that, when you look at it from the beginning of the round until he throws that kick, you'll notice that it looks very organic. It looks very natural. So from Neil's perspective, right before that leg kick landed, when he saw Rafael step in with that left leg, it wasn't necessarily looking like, okay, there's this horribly strong leg kick that's coming at me. It kind of looks more natural, more organic, and as if that it's not something to worry about, and he knows better now. So that was something that I liked a lot. Obviously, again, Neil was a little bit sloppy, in my opinion, his footwork circling towards the left of Dos Anjos in the way that he did it. He was wide open for that kick, in my opinion, and Dos Anjos did really well. And then obviously the next part of the fight on the ground. Well, yeah, Rafael's is an excellent ground fighter. He's got really good grappling, and he dominated clearly from the first second until the last when Neil had to tap out. So it'll be fun to see how it goes. I think Dos Anjos again has made a really good case for himself to get, if not a title shot, get closer to one very quickly. He's shown that at 170 he's doing quite well. Neil, on the other hand, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for him to see what happens next because he had, well, you know, when you look at it, he fought, if I'm not mistaken, twice last year against Lawrence Larkin. He lost, and he beat Johnny Hendricks, and now he's got a loss again. So not a horrible track record, but probably, you know, he'll have to do a couple of fights before even being considered a worthy contender again. So excellent fight, enjoyed that one a lot, and then it's time to talk about the main event. And then we get to the main event, Amanda Nunez against Valentina Shevchenko. Well, a little bit difficult again to say something that'll please everybody, but actually I kind of liked it. I was not surprised that the crowd was booing during a large portion of the fight, because it wasn't the kind of fight that they like to see, meaning a really big brawl where both opponents go at it, or this kind of slugfest where fighters just stand in front of each other, go at it, and there's lots of blood flying everywhere. So, given the past of Amanda Nunez, what she's been doing in her last couple of fights, I think that a lot of people were expecting that. So we had the TKO against Ronda Rousey. She beat Miesha Tate as well. So I think for the last couple of fights, that was pretty much what people were expecting. So I'm not surprised that the crowd was not in favor of the kind of fight we saw, and that is actually a fencing match. Now, if you look at fencing, it is very often just a matter of trying to score points, which means a lot of back and forth, a lot of, how should I put it, waiting from just outside of reach and trying to find the right timing, the right opportunity, the perfect setup for landing that decisive point, and doing that over and over and over. And that's pretty much what we saw with Nunez against Shevchenko. They were both unwilling to commit to a brawl, which I think is a smart thing to do for both women, because they both hit hard, they're good strikers. So if they would have decided to just slug it out in the center of the octagon, then probably somebody would have been knocked out. Now, from their perspective, you can be very confident about your abilities when you fight, and that's all great. But that doesn't mean you're invulnerable. And I think they both know that the other fighter has sufficient power in her techniques to finish it. So instead of making it into this brawl that the crowd would have liked, they fought a very technical fight, trying to score points, trying to land good shots, and sure, I mean, if there would have been a knockout, that would have been great. But you saw the way they fought; they weren't willing to commit to pretty much anything. Which, again, I'm speaking in broad terms here. In general, it's a general statement. So I kind of like that fight just to see how they both would act. On the one hand, we had Amanda, who had a little bit of a reputation for not having the stamina to last 5 rounds. She clearly proved otherwise. So with one caveat that we do need to add, which was mentioned during the fight as well, is that there was no grappling involved, which is extremely fatiguing. So she was never truly put against the fence. She was never in a bottom position where she had to fight for minutes on end to get back up again or to avoid being submitted or knocked out. So she was very smart in the way that she conserved her energy throughout the fight, making sure that Valentina had to move around a lot, whereas Amanda herself had to do less footwork and so on, picking her shots, setting it up well. So I think she was very smart in how she used her endurance to make sure she had at least a little bit left in the gas tank by the time the last round came about. So good fight on her behalf. She's a champion, so you need to dethrone the champion, and I think that's where Valentina fell short a little bit. Now I'll put it right out there to begin with. In my opinion, if I would have been a judge, and I wasn't obviously, but if I were judging that fight, I would have gone for either a draw, or if you absolutely had to appoint a winner, I would have given it to Shevchenko. I think she was a little bit more active. She fought a little bit harder, a little bit better. So that would have been my assessment, and I can understand that final round when Valentina ended up on the floor after that failed throw, she that could have swayed all judges to give a little bit more weight to Amanda for that round, and maybe that changed the tide. I don't know. It's, in my opinion, not really the best way to go about it, but hey, that's the prerogative of the judges. So if they think that warrants giving the victory to Amanda, then so be it. But I think both fighters know full well that it was really, really close. Amanda never truly put Valentina in danger, but the opposite is also true. Even though I think that Valentina scores more effective techniques and landed maybe just a little bit more, she never really managed to rock Amanda or put her in a position of danger where she was in a scramble to survive. Never really happened. Which, given the way that the fight was, like I said, a fencing match with people trying to score points and trying to avoid overcommitting to avoid counterpunches or running into something, given that kind of fight, it's not surprising that it ended as such. Now, as far as Valentina is concerned, I like her a lot. She's a good striker. However, one of the things that you see in the fight consistently is that she comes up short just an inch, half an inch, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on which strike she throws. But she did a lot of jab cross entries, and they pretty much, most of them fell short. A couple of them landed, but she always just just didn't manage to land that blow, or it was just a glancing blow. So she needed to recalibrate her striking, especially her straight punches, in that fight, in my opinion, after the first and most definitely after the second round. And she didn't. Her coaches should have told her, like, look, you have to turn your rear shoulder more into that left straight. You have to do a double step. You have to do more explosive footwork. Advanced step deeper into Amanda's space on the entry. That, or follow up afterwards a little bit more. She did a couple times where she did the jab cross and then she followed the leg technique, and that leg technique tended to score. So she did that a few times, and I think she should have done more of that, and might have actually created a situation where Amanda would have been more hesitant to put that much pressure on Valentina by trying to walk her down a little bit and keep on threatening and so on. So that was what I think was missing a little bit, just that ability for Shevchenko to adjust on the fly to a tactical problem, meaning that her weapons fell short an inch, maybe 2 inch, almost every single time she used the jab cross. And that's something that I think she is perfectly able to adapt to. I mean, she's an excellent striker. She has a lot of striking experience outside of MMA, so that shouldn't be an issue for her. And I don't understand why her coaches didn't pick up on that and told her to fix that issue. Again, it's not easy, obviously, at this level to do that kind of stuff, but if you look at the reaction speed that Valentina has, she many times countered with perfect timing, moved in to try to get a clinch, especially in the early rounds, or counter punching. So it's not about her being not fast enough to react, or not seeing the attacks coming so she doesn't know how to counter, but it's mainly a matter of distance. She needed go a little bit further out with her striking to land, and that was missing. And then if I do have to critique something, that would have been just drop the spinning back fist. It's not working. It's one of the most overrated techniques, in my opinion, to begin with, and it is almost always used incorrectly, meaning in a way that you can, I wouldn't say necessarily see it coming, but it's just it's an overrated technique, and she used it too many times, and she was lucky, Valentina, that she didn't get countered. So I would very much like her to stop throwing that one. Amanda tried a spinning elbow. It failed also. I wouldn't say it was as horrible, but again, she could have been countered extremely hard by Valentina as she spun into that reverse elbow, especially because Valentina is really good at counter striking. So she got away with that silly mistake as well. Overall, I mean, an interesting technical fight. If you want to see two fighters at the top of their game in striking, in MMA, and go at it without actually trying to turn it into a brawl, but keep it very technical, and most of all score points. In such a scenario, what often happens is that they try to score points, try to make sure they rack up the points and win the rounds until they manage to find an opening that staggers the opponent, and then they pounce and then they finish it off. But that second part didn't happen for either one of both women, so they were stuck with trying to get more points. Again, not bad, just an interesting fight. If where do they go from here? Well, for Amanda, it's a little bit difficult because she's pretty much beaten everybody. So who's she gonna fight next? I really don't have a clue. It's gonna be difficult finding a worthy opponent for her because Juliana Peña maybe, but I don't think she's at the level yet. So Kat Zingano, I'd like to see her fight again. But again, obviously, given what happened in her personal life, that she's had a rough couple of years, but she's been trying to fight back into contender territory, but I don't think she's there yet. So who's she gonna fight? I really don't know. We'll see how that evolves. For Valentina, well, I wouldn't be against giving her a third opportunity at Amanda as a second fight. Again, in my opinion, and if you look at the fight again, I think it's very close. She was not beaten. You cannot say that she was beaten. Amanda didn't beat her up, didn't outclass her, not at all. Quite on the contrary, there were many moments in which I think you can rightfully say that Valentina actually performed better than Amanda at specific points throughout the fight. So I would be in favor of either giving her another shot at the title in maybe 5-6 months, depending on what Amanda does next, or give her somebody else to fight first and then go for the title again if she wins. Either way, we'll see what the UFC wants to do with that, but I think she deserves another shot. She's a really good fighter. There's a little bit of, there are some issues that I think she needs to work on. Again, like I said, the spinning back fist, let's just drop that or limit it to the points, the scenarios where it works really well, namely when your opponent is circling away from you, you can have him run into it. Some of the things that I think she didn't use, the classic strategy of chopping away at the edges, she didn't do that. With that extended lead arm from Amanda, she could have done a lot of interesting stuff with that, but she didn't. Hardly any fighter does. Again, this is just a little bit off topic, but the only one who actually did some smart stuff against the extended lead arm was Floyd Mayweather against Conor McGregor in their boxing match, because he would slap it down and he would tap it and he would actually work with it. And you would expect that MMA fighters by now have figured out that you don't just ignore that it's straightened out lead arm. John Jones does it all the time. Amanda Nunez does it all the time. Lots of fighters use it, and nobody challenges that lead arm. And there are numerous ways that you can attack that and take away that fence that they put up in front of them. And as soon as you take it away, then those fighters are going to be very much, I wouldn't say crippled, because that's not what happens, but typically they are hindered. And they get frustrated because they can't use that lead arm effectively anymore to put pressure on you, threaten you with it, try to measure the distance, and all the other reasons that you use it. But you need to attack it. Again, chopping away at the edges is one of the strategies, one of the tactics I like to use against better opponents. It works really well, but you need to work at it. So, like I said, there's a little bit of a growth path for Valentina yet. I think a little bit more specific tactics adapted to Amanda, just some small tweaks. For Amanda herself, good performance. Again, she was smart about the way she fought. I wasn't particularly impressed by those lead side kicks because they didn't really score all that hard. She did a couple of snap kicks to the body with the rear leg that worked quite well, and one of them was when again we have that lead hands that she puts out there, and I don't remember if she locked fingers with Valentina, or at least there was this hand grab going on, but I don't remember if it was locked fingers or not. And Amanda, without pause, without setup or wind up, she threw this very nice front kick, kind of a front snap kick in between the snap and a push kick to the body to Valentina, and it scored really well. So that was again excellent use of that technique. So some really good stuff there. If she can keep her cardio up, then I think she can keep on fighting the way she fights right now, threatening from a distance, hitting really hard, and obviously, as you saw on the ground, she's no slouch there either. And as a final point, before I forget, one of the things that you see in mixed martial arts is that very often there's this narrative that happens, and the narrative used to be leg kicks don't finish fights. If you guys watch fights from 10-15 years ago, and you'll see even guys like Joe Rogan now, who's been commentating forever. You'll hear him say that as well. Leg kicks don't finish fights, which is that was the narrative for the longest time. Well, yeah, we kind of know that is totally wrong now. Okay, so watch what Justin Gaethje does. Watch what we saw in the fight with Gilbert Melendez against Jeremy Stevens. Same thing. Leg kicks do finish fights, but not in the way that a knockout punch or a knockout kick does, obviously. That should have been self-explanatory, but apparently it isn't. So, and I think one of those things, one of the narratives that also exists is that you cannot strike from bottom position when you're on your back, which is nonsense. You can obviously strike. And when you watch the last few seconds of the Nunez fight, you saw that Valentina did some excellent straight striking from her back. that Amanda was not really happy about taking those punches. So, and again, this was one of those things that in MMA you have a narrative, and everybody says, you shouldn't fight like this because it doesn't work, until somebody goes out and does it. There is all this blah 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 about traditional martial arts and karate. They don't work in MMA, and then a guy like Lyoto Machida comes along and he uses those similar techniques. You see Wonderboy Thompson coming along using basically Bill Wallace style, a wide horse stance, staying sideways, using the lead leg effectively, and knocking people out with it. So again, the narrative is always nonsense. The main thing is that a sport always evolves, and I think this is something that we will see as well in MMA. That when you have this common sense, quote unquote, about certain techniques, how they should be used, that will be challenged. Now, Conor McGregor is one of the guys who did that, and I think with a little bit of luck, Valentina will also be somebody who does that because of her excellent striking. And this is one of the things where one of the aspects in which you can see it is that just watch the last few seconds of the fight when Amanda puts her on the ground and she gets her away from the fence, and you'll see Valentina all of a sudden showing a couple of really nice straight punches from her back that, just narrowly didn't hit hard enough, but they could have been a little bit more effective. But Amanda had to come in close and get her head down and bury it on Valentina's chest or next to her head to avoid getting tagged with a couple more of those. So that's the final point I want to leave you guys with. Thank you for listening. As always, feel free to join me on my Facebook page here at MMA Formula. Like, share, subscribe. That would be excellent. And I have a lot more coming next. Thanks and take care.